Hello again, Steve here. A few thoughts. I was just on improving the quality of our life experience. I was just going through that book. It's called, you might have heard about it, Freakonomics. It's the new one actually, well, the newer one I guess, Super Freakonomics. I thought it was an interesting piece of work. Economy, the word economy is an interesting thing, so I thought I would just look it up in terms of its origin. And oops, everything went crazy on me here. So basically, from way back when, 1530s, it basically meant household management, from the Latin word oikonomia. And then further on down, household management / thrift. Another sort of synonyms at the time were manager or steward of a household or abode. And further on down, we get a little bit more recent, the 1600s, it meant frugality or judicious use of resources. I like that. And then only when we get into the 1660s and so on, it starts to turn into more of a wealth thing, wealth, resources of the country, and in brackets short for political economy, which is what we hear, I would say is most of what we use it for today. It has to do with what's the economy doing. It's as if it's a, big monolith out there somewhere. But the book Freakonomics, they use the word economy in terms of somebody who's very practical at managing this one. Somebody who has innate economy to them, how they manage what they do. What is the most practical thing to do? And how is it that people behave within their management of what they have? So they use examples of prostitution for people who are in situations where they don't see any other option. Well, in a way, they're economists. They're managing to the best way they know how to gain resources. And then, of course, on the very high end, there are those like the very wealthy prostitutes who, perhaps they make a bargain within themselves for that aspect of economy and manage themselves in a certain way. And they talked about at one point, I forget the guy's name, but there was this guy who was basically a farmer boy who nobody in his family had ever had any sort of education whatsoever. And at a certain point in his life, he might have gone to first year college or something like that, but he saw these guys who looked like they had lots of resources or whatever, but it didn't look like they did anything. So he asked them, what do you guys actually do? What is your field? And one guy said, I'm an economist. Went on to explain that basically, to this guy anyway, who'd come from a farmer, you work by your fingers and your bones. To him, it looked like they didn't do anything, but they got lots of money for it. So that was his economy, even though he went into the field of economics. His economy of the management of his household was such that he went the easiest route. I think I've even heard the term used before in reference to the way a river will meander, or the way animals will behave. They behave for the self-interest, right? The river will take this bend because that's the easiest, that's the natural flow. That's the management, that's the easiest management for it. Otherwise, it would have to it would need a pump to go the other way because it would be going against the law of gravity, right? So, and of course, animals will act in self-interest. If weather patterns change, they will manage their burrows. They might dig them deeper. They'll become economic activity of managing their burrows will go deeper down. So, and the other thing I liked about this Freakonomics book is that it seemed to indicate, because they cited a lot of research, it seems to indicate that to a great extent, we operate on self-interest on a very deep, visceral level, because we have inherent needs, right? We have to eat, and we have to maintain our lives. So therefore, to some extent, we're all economists. We're all managing our households. The only question is it more effective or less effective than we would like? That's what it comes down to. It's not as though we're not economists. We all are, to that definition, that older definition. The only question is, can we do better? Or, in looking at it, how are we doing? And this, to me, is a great straight-on corollary to our quality of life. Because, if we are to admit that we have any input in it, which if we agree with the uncontrollables and the controllables, if we have any dominion over the controllables, then we can manage it. As economists that we are, we can manage our lives as best we can, shoot forward towards our goals, and if we fail on the outward perspective, well, if we learn from it, we can dust ourselves off and go again. I think this relates a lot of times too, especially, it helps. I think our economy of action is helped when we sort of systematize it. Not sort of systematize, but really systematize it. At least in the bigger picture first. And this is a bit of a tangent I'm going to go on, because I tend to do that once in a while. I don't take too long. But have a greater effect on the economy of our lives, if we have a bigger picture ideal that we want to work towards, and we then have separate projects and goals within those projects within that, and then we manage that. We manage it as best we can. And if we are managing, if we're going about our lives without managing it, we are economists, but we're kind of like subconscious autopilot economists, going along just as previous generations have, and repeating the process. We've picked it up from our parents and our society. We'll pass it on to our kids in their society. But if we're conscious about it, we can say, aha, I am the economist of my life here within the controllables, and do my best to see that bigger picture ideal. Do my best to recognize the desires within that. Do my best to create the visions and the planning and so on within that. Do my best to find foundations for belief that it is possible that I can move forward. And therefore, in doing so, I evoke the will to act. And when there's will to act, the action can be done with purpose of attaining some sort of a reconciliation or a movement towards the ideal, the creation of the ideal, the bringing to life of the ideal. That's the purpose of the action. And the actions are also more certain. You could say more faithful. They're more certain because of all the evidence behind. Right? The recognition of the big picture, the realizing that the desire is there to support that, the clarity of vision, the evidence-based belief system. Evidence-based. I recognize I've done this, therefore I must be able to do this. I've got all these chickens in a row, therefore I can move forward. That sort of thing. Things I can actually point to which support belief. It's essential for belief. When there is vision and belief, there is will. And when there is will, there can be purposeful action, certain action. And with those ingredients, there has to be propulsion forward to lay down the individual goals, to build the projects, to move in the direction of the ideal. Therefore, I would say that surely has to improve the quality of our life experience. Once again, I say we are all economists. We're just either conscious of it or we're not. We're less organized, we're more organized. We want to improve quality of life, make a difference in our lives and the lives of others. I would say the more organized and conscious of economy we put forth, the better off we'll be. My name is Steve. Great for chatting again. Talk again soon. Bye-bye.